Welcome to the Longevity Formula with Dr. Brandon Crawford. Let's explore the new era of wellness.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to the Longevity Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Brandon Crawford. This is a very exciting event for me. This is an opportunity for me to share with the world a lot of things that not just I'm doing, but a lot of things that are going on in the world. Now, I'll explain more about that. But before we get into that, let me just kind of introduce myself. So I am a clinician. My primary licensure is in chiropractic. I do have training in functional neurology. So I'm a fellow of the International Board of Functional Neurology. I have a specialty in childhood neurological development. So that's my clinical background. I've been a pioneer in the laser field for over 14 years now. I've been involved in various clinical cases around the world, whether as a consultant or as the lead physician that involves laser on the brain, on the nervous system for various complex neurological disorders. And I don't want to boast myself here, but I've been considered a pioneer in the laser field for several years now. And there's so many more details that we're going to go into that. It's a very exciting topic for me. But right now, I'm just kind of setting the stage for what is this all about? What are we trying to accomplish? Who is this for, right? So this podcast is for the person out there that wants more information, the person out there that knows there's more than what traditional healthcare is offering. Maybe you have that just intuitive yearning inside of you, or you're coming up against the wall. Maybe you have some kind of debilitating condition, or a loved one, maybe your child or someone else has a condition, a brain injury, something that is going on that's plaguing them and you and your family, and no one really has answers. I want to be the solution for you. I want to provide not just myself, but I want to bring the experts in each respective field, right? So we're going to talk to people in neurosurgery. We're going to talk to physical therapists. I'm going to talk to occupational therapists, speech therapists, chiropractors. I'm going to talk with mental health experts, right? So whoever is advancing their field, we're going to be bringing them on this podcast, because it's one thing to read the research, right? And research is important. And we're going to base our conversations on the foundation of the research, right? But then we're also going to talk about clinical practice, because we call it practice because it is the practice of that respective field. We need to, again, have this foundational layer of research. But if that's all that we go off of, we have to understand that if we're only going off research, we're going to be behind, right? And so I want to talk to the people, and I want to be the one doing the research and doing things in practice that is furthering the field. And so those are the type of people that we're going to be talking with on here. This is also for those doctors and therapists and students even that, again, want more answers. Unfortunately, you don't get exposed to a lot of the things that we're going to talk about in school. And I understand that, you have to pass your boards, and you have to, get good grades on your tests and all this kind of stuff. It has to be a standardized method of education. So I'm not knocking the education. It's very important, but we also need to acknowledge that there's advances going on that are not going to be taught in school, maybe for another 20 years, maybe for longer than that, right? So you don't have that kind of time to wait. Your loved one doesn't have that kind of time to wait. So I want to bring this information to you now, right? So that's very important to me. Now, why the longevity formula? What's up with that name? Well, my history, what got me to this point, it really starts way back a long time ago, actually with my own father, right? So I grew up in small town Texas, and I was more of a blue collar family. And my dad, he actually died when he was 53, right? So I was 21 when he passed away. But he lived a lifestyle that was not exactly great, right? He smoked, he drank too much, he worked too much. He was sedentary. He didn't do all the things that we inherently know that we're supposed to do. I remember when he had a stroke, I believe he was 48 or 49. The doctor did not talk to him about his smoking. The doctor did not talk to him about his drinking. The doctor did not tell him he needed to exercise more, change his working habits, or anything like this. The doctor gave him a medication and said, follow up in a few weeks. And nothing else was really discussed. And again, he had another stroke after that. And there's so many things that could have been prevented, so many discussions that could have been had that aren't even going to the level that I'm going to be talking. I'm not talking about using lasers and doing all these things that I'm just talking about some simple lifestyle habits that could have been discussed with him that weren't. And so ultimately, when he was 53, he ended up having an aortic dissection, right? So the big blood vessel going down from your heart to the rest of your body, it's about the size of a water hose. It basically exploded on him. And he died, right? He died at the young age of 53, and that should not have happened. And so ever since then, I've been on this journey of not only how do I prevent this in me, but how can I set the stage for my family, for my children, for my next generations? What can I do to set the stage for them, not just to live longer, but to live better, to thrive, not just survive, right? So that's been my mindset ever since that happened to my father. And I was initially going to medical school, right? So I was going to Texas A&M. I was on track to go into their medical school. Then I got married and decided, maybe I don't want to be a surgeon, mainly because divorce rates are so high. That's really what ultimately made my decision there. But let's go to pharmacy school. I was always working in the pharmacy. I was a pharmacy technician. And so I did. I got accepted to 2 different pharmacy schools. And interestingly enough, I was trying to decide which pharmacy school do I go to. And I was literally praying about this. I remember I'm from small town Texas. So I was sitting in a field. I was dove hunting. There were no no birds flying, which is very common where I come from. And I was literally just praying, okay, God, which school do I need to go to? And I literally had a voice in my head that said, you're not going to pharmacy school. Now, I didn't take anything. I wasn't on anything, but it was literally a voice in my head. It almost knocked me over. And so that really helped to form the basis, the first part of this longevity formula that we're going to talk about, and that's faith. Because if it weren't for faith, I wouldn't be where I'm at today, and I wouldn't have influenced all the people that I've influenced up to this point in my career. Because I was willing to, on faith alone, not go to pharmacy school, but then listen and lean into that of, okay, God, what is your will for me? And he led me back to a chiropractor, Dr. Lee Bergeron from Clifton, Texas, to go shadow him. And I thought, this is crazy. What's going on? Well, I had previously had a failed back surgery when I was in high school. And I was basically still dragging my leg, still like it was on fire after the surgery. And Dr. Bergeron saw me in the parking lot hobbling along. And he said, Brandon, what are you doing? Like, why don't you come to me? Let me help you. And I'm like, I don't know who you are. What are you talking to me? He said, I'm a chiropractor. I said, well, that's great, but I've already done PT and I did all the medications and then nothing worked. So I did the surgery. Well, that failed too. So you can't fix me. I've already had surgery. And he said, whatever, I can still help you. Come on in. And I said, well, I'm broke. There's no way I can afford you. And he said, I think I'm supposed to do this for free. So just come in and see me. So no joke, 2 weeks later, he worked on me. I'm completely better, right? And that was a big eye opener for me, right? So God said, hey, look, you don't listen. I tried to point you in the right direction then. You didn't listen. So now I've got to literally boom in your head that you're not supposed to go to pharmacy school. Glad he did that. And so I did. I went to chiropractic school. When I was in chiro school, I knew I didn't want to focus on back pain, neck pain. So I wasn't fully aware of why I was there, which that's not a knock towards chiropractic. I love chiro. And it's way more than back pain, neck pain. So don't misunderstand what I'm saying there. But I was able to listen to Dr. John D'Onofrio my first semester in school. And he was, at the time, he was the president of the American Chiropractic Neurology Board. He was the first president appointed And I listened to how he explained how physical receptors activate and influence the brain, right? So even if you're adjusting a joint or moving a muscle or doing these things to the body, you influence the brain. And I had never heard chiropractic explained like that. And so I was very drawn to it. I went up to him after that initial lecture and I said, look, you don't know me and I don't know you, but this is why I'm here. And I gave him a little bit about my story and he said, absolutely. I'm taking you in. You're going to be my protege. And from that moment on, I fell in love with functional neurology. And so that's kind of a little bit about my background. And so I remember working with Dr. D'Onofrio. He let me intern on a case, and it was a genetic brain disorder case. It was a case where the gyri in the brain don't develop, right? You essentially just don't develop this brain, this highly complex brain like you should. Lifespan is typically a lot shorter. You end up with a lot of mental handicaps and you really just don't develop very well. And I remember working with him and going, look, what are we going to do? There's genetic limitations. Why are we working with this patient? And he said, Brandon, number one, never define the outcome of your patient because you don't know what it's going to be. And that was a big thing for me because it let me know that a lot of the limitation to healing my patients actually comes from me, actually comes from the provider. And so it opened up my mind, right? And I definitely didn't have a full grasp on it back then, but it at least started the conversation. And so anyway, I was like, okay, that's great, but what the heck are we going to do? And he said, look, there's these lasers. There's not a lot of people using them on the brain, right? Remember, this was probably, I was still in school, so it was probably 16, maybe 17 years ago. And he said, there is research that shows we should be using this on the brain. And so we did. Of course, the parents said, yes, let's go for it. Everything was approved. And so we started using laser therapy on this kid's brain. Over the course of about a year, right, this continued. And then the child went in for a follow-up with his medical neurologist. And the neurologist walks in the room, takes a look, and walked back out. And then finally comes back in and he's looking at the chart notes and he goes, I must have the wrong room. This kiddo clearly doesn't have this diagnosis. Is this who this is? And the parent said, yes, this is my child. This is what he was diagnosed with. And he goes, well, so they did the exam. They took a look at him. They said, there's no way, like this doesn't happen, right? We don't see this type of development in this condition. We must have misdiagnosed it. Well, it wasn't a misdiagnosis. It was a genetic disorder. It was clearly diagnosed. And so that's what really set my tone of lasers change the brain. Functional neurology changes the brain. If we combine those, we can have a huge influence on so many different things. I just witnessed in front of my own eyes how a genetic brain disorder could turn into something that had never been done before. So I knew there was something there, and it was exactly what God placed me on this earth to do. And so that's really what set the tone for my career, right? Now, since then, it's been a bit of a roller coaster, to say the least, but I've been fortunate enough to work with some amazing families from across the entire world. I can tell stories about children with spastic quadriplegia that should never have walked or never have crawled, never have even spoken. And they've broken through all those limitations and they can do those things. I can talk about nonverbal autistic kiddos that, again, should never speak, should never be able to socially engage. And now they're coming up, giving us high fives, hugging us and talking to us, right? These are all stories that I get to work with on a weekly basis, right? Spinal cord injuries that should never feel their feet, let alone move them, right? And we get to see them start to go through gait training and get them up out of wheelchairs. I mean, so many things that we could talk about. I get to witness, again, because of the path that God has led me down. So it's been an amazing story. But there's more to my story, right? And there's more to the evolution of this podcast, the longevity formula, because I also went through my own health challenges, right? So initially out of school, I was all, gung-ho, hustle, bustle. I'm going to change the world and going to do all these things. But of course I had to provide for my family too, right? And so I was stuck. I first ran a physical medicine facility actually in a hospital in the Las Colinas area, which is in the Dallas-Fort Worth area in Texas. And so I was running that, did not really like it. High volume, hospital insurance based. It wasn't my jam, but it was paying the bills. So I did get to learn a lot, but then went and opened a practice. I actually worked out of Dr. Lee Bergren's office for a little bit in Clifton, and then ultimately purchased a practice in Austin, Texas, which again was insurance based, ran myself on the ground, right? So this was a high volume practice, not because I wanted it to be, but because I had to, again, provide for my family. And that's unfortunate for healthcare, is that there is a bar set where we're going to reimburse you just enough to keep you working really hard in this machine that we've created. And you don't really have enough time to fully engage with this patient to heal them, but just enough to check off the check boxes and send them down the road in this standard of care model that we've created. And so I was playing the game, doing my thing, still helping people, but I really started to not feel well myself. My energy was tanking. I could barely wake up in the morning. When I got home from work, I dang sure didn't have enough time to play with my kids. And so I finally, got a ton of labs run, started finding all kinds of inflammatory markers. I did actually have a TSH level of 25. And so TSH is thyroid stimulating hormone. Basically, my pituitary was yelling at my thyroid saying, "Wake up, you idiot, you need to work." And my thyroid was asleep. My thyroid just wasn't working. And so, I tried supplementation. I did all the things with food. I did all the nutrition I could possibly do. I was using laser, not the lasers. We have way more advanced lasers now than what I had back then. But I was doing all the things that I knew how to do, but I wasn't getting there. I was not helping myself. And so I really sat down with my wife and said, something's wrong. I don't know what's going on. And I'd been teaching with Dr. D'Onofrio for several years at that point in time. And a major discussion, or a major point of, the lecture that we always focused on, was stress physiology. And within that, I always taught that you can do anything and everything, but if you're still living on stress island, the supplement isn't going to work. The medication isn't going to work. Whatever you're throwing at the problem, it's still going to be limited because of your stress physiology going on. And so we acknowledge that, hey, look, this type of practice, this type of healthcare model that we were running, it was bad for me. And so we made the decision to sell everything and to move our family to Costa Rica for a sabbatical. And that's where I found myself. It literally just re-energized me. It let me go into the wilderness again to focus on my relationship with God, to focus on my faith. And really, I thought I was going to get this amazing business plan, sent from above, and it's going to be amazing. That's not what happened. And again, this is still just really focusing on that initial pillar of the longevity formula, which there's other pillars I'll get to, I promise. But God really spoke to me, and probably 2 months into the trip, I was going on a long jog, and I was almost mad. I was like, God, I've been here for 2 months and nothing's happened. Why the heck am I here? And he walked me through Exodus, right? And so I was going through Exodus that entire time. And it was just this aha moment of like Jesus died for you, right? That this is why I brought you into the wilderness. There's nothing more important than that. And I was like, whoa, I was kind of taken back. I was like, I was expecting something else. I was expecting a business plan. I was expecting a new breakthrough in science. I was expecting some major download, but I got a major download, but not what I was expecting, right? And so that's why faith has to be the pillar. It has to be the first pillar, right? And I'm not forcing Christianity on anyone. I'm just saying that's my first pillar. So it's needed. It's necessary. It has to be there. If you think it doesn't, it does. And if you think you don't have a faith, you do. Even by thinking you don't have a faith, you do, right? So it's very important. But that's kind of, my story. what brings me to this place in front of you. I've been able to travel the world clinically. I've been able to work through my own health challenges, and that's not even all of them. I have more that I've had to work through. And so it's given me this really unique perspective on life, on our healthcare system, on innovation, and trying to really advance the profession of neurology and laser therapy and stem cell, regenerative medicine, and all of these things. So I hope that gives a little bit of perspective on what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. And so what is this longevity formula, right? What really forms the basis of it? And I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. How do I really condense how to thrive, right? So I've already talked about faith, right? So there's faith as the first pillar. Light, okay? Light is so important. Let me just run through these. So faith, light, movement, mindset, nutrition, and science. Those are the pillars that I've defined here. And it's in that sequential order, right? So after faith comes light. Light's important. We can talk about this from several different perspectives. In my mind, again, going back to my faith pillar, right? Because everything kind of sequentially degrades to the prior pillar, right? So God created light before he created life. This is very important to note. I don't think that was on accident. Life cannot happen without light. So that means that we can apply light properly and we can apply light improperly. Well, it just so happens that light dictates our biology. Light drives something called circadian rhythm, or what I like to call circadian biology. This has everything to do with how our hormones function, with how our sleep patterns happen, with even how our muscles move, right? So when we wake up in the morning, we have certain genes in our skeletal muscle that when they're exposed to that low angle morning light, it actually activates those genes and tells our muscles it's time to wake up, it's time to move. And so we see better muscle strength, better muscle endurance throughout the day. And then as the sun's setting, then again, those clock genes go, hey, it's getting to be nighttime. Now it's time to downregulate. It's time to get ready for bed, right? And so you see a reduction in muscle strength and endurance, et cetera, right? Everything about us is run off of this rising and setting of the sun, right? So we need to acknowledge that. But if we don't give our body and our brain the ability to be outside, say we wake up, we go straight into the office, we're working under fluorescent lights, which is not the proper wavelength that we should be exposed to, it's going to start to throw off that circadian biology. It's going to throw off everything, right? Anything from hormones to rising inflammation to skeletal muscles not working properly, digestive issues, et cetera, right? So we have to acknowledge the importance of light. And it goes beyond that. We can harness this light. We can use it in the form of LEDs. We can use it in the form of lasers. There's so many things that we can do clinically and at home with this topic, right? And we're going to dig into this. We're going to dig into this a lot. Obviously, it's a favorite of mine. Next is movement. We are designed to move. We are not designed to sit. We are not designed to be sedentary. We're not designed to be still. When we move in certain ways, and there's ways to move and there's ways that we should not move, right? And we can get into all that. But when we move properly, we see better brain activation. We see inflammation go down. We see neuroplasticity take place, right? We see challenging brain disorders start to reverse and resolve. We see better thought processes. We see things start to happen better whenever we start to move. It's amazing. The next pillar is mindset. One podcast that you're going to get to listen to is between me and Dr. Jerry Levine, and we go into this concept of mindset and how we can create our own limitations by our mindset. If someone wants to have the goal to be able to walk across the stage at graduation after a traumatic brain injury, they have to have the mindset that that's possible. And they have to also be working with providers that also share that mindset, that think and know that that's possible, that is a goal that we should be striving toward, right? This can apply in healthcare. This can apply in every facet of life. And it has to, right? If you wake up in the morning and you hit the alarm clock and you automatically say, here we go again. Today's going to suck. I'm going to have this conversation with this person and going to have to see this person. This is going to be great. If that's your mindset, get ready. Your day's going to be terrible. That's not how we need to be living. We need to be living in gratitude. We need to wake up. We need to say, I'm alive today. That means I have a purpose. What is that purpose? I'm going to go find it. I have the opportunity to talk to this person. I have the opportunity to make things right over here. I have the ability to do this, right? The mindset needs to start then, right? We have to wake up in gratitude and saying, I can do this. We can do this. This is going to be okay. It does not mean it's going to be easy. But we also need to understand the concept of neuroplasticity in all of this. Every single one of these steps involves neuroplasticity. Every single pillar involves neuroplasticity. So if I wake up in the morning and I say, today's going to suck, and I do that repetitively over and over and over again, my brain begins to neuroplastically wire to the day sucking. And my reticular activating system is going to begin to look for all the bad things that I keep reminding myself of that are going to happen and transpire. And my perception of the world then is that the world sucks. And that is how our brain works. It is neuroplasticity. It can be negative or it can be positive. We get to dictate that. So wake up and generate that positive neuroplasticity. Get in the right mindset. Stay in the right mindset. Again, it's not easy, but it needs to happen. Next pillar is nutrition. Our body has a certain fuel source that it needs. If we feed it the wrong things, right? It's like if you were to drive a Lamborghini and you go and you put corn syrup in your fuel tank, you're probably not going to really be harnessing the power of that amazing engine. Our engine has certain fuel needs. If we don't provide those, then we are not going to optimize the engine that is within us, right? So we have to pay attention to nutrition. We have to fuel our bodies and our brains with the right things. And my last pillar is science. And the first pillar is faith because science is my last one. And we have to acknowledge that there is a foundation to this science, right? And so I made it science because a big part of what I do is pushing limits, pushing boundaries. We're starting research right now. We have a research lab here in Texas. We have researchers that we're doing various research projects with because we see clinically things happen that traditional medicine says should not happen. So we have to figure that out. So we have to use science in order to explain it, right? We have to, that science is the language of the world right now. And so we have to speak that language if we want to facilitate change, right? Because the ultimate goal of this podcast is to change healthcare. That is the mission. That is the goal. So if I cannot communicate in the same language that the world communicates in, I'm not going to facilitate that change. So this has to be a pillar. We have to be doing the science, and we are doing the science. And we also need to be paying attention to the science that has been done and has been lost. And that happens, unfortunately. Things get suppressed. Things get lost. Things get forgotten. But the science is there. So let's talk about it and let's use it to our advantage. Let's use it to our advantage so that we can thrive and not just survive. So what are you going to gain, right? Why do you care? Why should you care? Why do I want you to care? Well, if you come along with us on this journey, right, I'm going to give you access to some experts that, again, they're leading their fields. We're going to be talking with experts, again, in neurosurgery. We're going to talk with experts from the mental health field, all the therapy, anyone I can find that is pushing the limits and redefining healthcare. We're going to be talking to those people. It's going to be amazing. And fortunately, I already know those people. I get to work with those people every day in my office. I get to work with those people that are a phone call away from me, right? I get to talk to these researchers every day. It's amazing. But I also want you to hear from patients directly. So I'm going to be bringing in people whose lives have literally changed. People that maybe they had a child that could not talk or they could not walk, and they were told, don't expect this, or they were told to just pull life support and let the child pass away and donate their organs, right? They were told, don't hold any hope for this scenario. And then the child does walk, does talk, does come back to life and do all of these things. And it doesn't stop there, though. That's the important thing. It does not stop there, because then that child has an influence on so many lives beyond their own that if they were to have listened to that traditional model and just let their kids slip away or just forget about their kid, then all of those other lives, the hundreds or thousands or maybe even millions of lives, that change would not have happened, right? So that's what I want you to understand, is that we're changing healthcare. We're doing it. It's happening. I want you along on the ride. I want to give you unfettered access to how we're doing it. I want to give you access to the experts that I'm doing it with. And I want you to understand that research is important. We're doing the research, but we also have to pay attention to the clinical findings. We also have to pay attention to what the patients are saying and what the patients are experiencing, right? We have to acknowledge this. And just because it's not a peer-reviewed, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial doesn't mean that it's not important right now. It means that maybe we need to look at this a little differently, and then maybe we need to do the research, and that's okay. So that's why I want you along on this journey, right? That's why I think it's important for you and everyone you know to really pay attention to this. We're going to be real, okay? We're definitely going to be real. And again, if we're going to facilitate change, we have to be. We cannot fake this. I want to leave you with this. One of my favorite quotes by Albert Einstein. He's absolutely one of my favorite people that I've studied. Obviously, I haven't met him. I'm not that old. But he said, imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited. Imagination encircles the world. And that really goes along with everything that I've just said. We're going to use the knowledge. We're going to use the research as a foundation, but we have to acknowledge that it has limitation. Our imagination is where innovation comes from. And if we don't act on it, if we don't act on those little things dancing around in our head that say, what if I did this? What if we tried this? If we don't pay attention to that, we will not see innovation occur. And then we will die with that knowledge. We will die with that limitation. So this is all about breaking out from that. This is all about from breaking through plateaus and breaking through limitations. So very excited for this. I'm excited for you to be along on this journey with us. I'm looking forward to it, and I cannot wait for this to get going. Thank you.
We hope today's episode has inspired you to take that next step toward your best self. Remember, the path to longevity is paved with small, daily decisions. Your journey is unique, and every step, every choice brings you closer to your ultimate vision of a healthier, happier life. For more insights, tips, and resources, visit drbrandoncrawford.com.